Hello everyone, this is Dr. Leili Hatami. In this video, I'm going over one of the critical components of scientific research, which is control experiment. One of the physiology lab activities is to learn how to design a good experiment, how to find independent and dependent variables, and create experimental and control groups. So as I mentioned in this video, we are going to focus more on the control group. Control groups are essential for comparison and helping to isolate the effect of the independent variable. So the control experiments are designed to compare with the other groups. A single experiment may include just one experimental group or multiple experimental group, which we are going to compare the result coming from the control group to the experimental group or vice versa. So it's always for comparing with the effect of the independent variable which we are testing in our experimental groups. They involve keeping all variables constant except for one being tested, which the variable that we are going to test is called independent variable. The independent variable is the variable we are going to test it, or it is the cause. And then we have dependent variable, which is going to be measured, or it is the effect. By having a control group, you can be sure any changes you see are because of your independent variable or what you are testing, not something else. So then it's so important to know how to develop a control for an experiment. Developing a control for an experiment depends on the independent variables being tested. So it means that for control experiment, we are going to eliminate the independent variable or set at a standard value. But at first, we should make sure we know the differences between independent variables and dependent variables and how to find them. So for each experiment, we should know and how to find the independent variable and dependent variable. Independent variable is the variable being tested. So it should be tested. And then for dependent variable is the variable that is going to be measured. Or we can call independent variable as the cause and dependent variable as the effect. So one more time, if we want to create the control for our experiment, just easily you need to find the independent variable and remove it or eliminate it or set at a standard value. Let's look at some example, then it makes more sense. The first experiment that we are going to look is testing a new fertilizer on plant growth. Let's find independent variable and dependent variable for this experiment. So the independent variable, it's the variable is going to be tested. What we are going to test in this experiment? We are going to test the new fertilizer, the effect of new fertilizer on plant growth. So it means the new fertilizer is our independent variable. It is the cause. What about dependent variable? Dependent variable is the variable that we are going to measure it. So it should be measured. What we are going to measure is the plant growth. So it means the plant growth is going to be our dependent variable. Now for creating experiment, we need to create our experimental group and then control group. In our experimental group, we are gonna put our independent variable is gonna be tested as our experimental group. And then just simply to find or create our control group, you need to eliminate the independent variable. So it means our control group is the group with no independent variable, or removing the independent variable. Okay, so what's going to be our experimental group and control group in this experiment? So one more time, for the experiment, we can select two groups of plants. One group is receiving the new fertilizer, which would be our experimental group. And then the other group, which is not receiving the fertilizer, would be our control group. So the control group consists of plants that receive no fertilizer at all. So in this way, we can observe the natural growth of plants without any external influence from fertilizer, or we can actually compare the effect of the new fertilizer on plant growth with having the control group. Okay, let's have another example. So in this experiment, you're going to investigate the effect of a new drug on blood pressure. Again, we have to find independent variable and then dependent variable. The independent variable is the variable is going to be tested. It is the cause. What we are going to test, the effect of a new drug. So it means that is our independent variable. And then dependent variable is the one is going to be measured. And also it is the effect. But we are going to measure the blood pressure. So it means that is our dependent variable. And now we need to design an experiment with having the experimental group which in our experimental group, we are going to test the new drug. So the independent variable would be put in our experimental group, and our control group is the one without the new drug. So we actually can use the drug with no therapeutic effect, which is going to be our placebo. Okay, so let's see what would be our experiment. So in our experiment, we are going to have two groups of individuals or participants which they are experiencing the high blood pressure, and we are going to divide them to two groups. We are going to give one group the new drug. That would be our experimental group. It is obvious, right? And what about our control group? The control group is giving a placebo, which is a substance with no therapeutic effect. So in this way, the researchers can compare the effect of the new drug against the natural progression of the condition and any placebo effect. So then the experimental group would be the individuals or participants which receiving the new medicine, and the control group is going to receive the placebo. Okay, let's have another example. The example is that studying the impact of exercise on weight loss. So what we are going to test? Exercise, which is our independent variable. It is the cause. What we are going to measure? What is the effect? It's weight loss. So that is our dependent variable. To create an experiment with an experimental group and control group, now we're gonna have two groups, which one group is following an exercise regimen, and while the other group does not change their exercise habits. They're going to have their regular lifestyle without any intervention in their exercise routine. So it means the one which we are going to give them, like the specific like exercise, that would be our experimental group. And the other one which they are going to follow their regular lifestyle without any intervention, that's gonna be our control group. It's easy, right? At least it's easy to understand, I believe. So let's do another one. Now we're testing the efficiency of a new teaching method on student learning. So one more time, this teaching method, the new teaching method, is the cause. It's going to be tested. So that is our independent variable. And what would be our dependent variable? It's the effect. It's going to be measured, the student learning. And then for making the experimental group, you just need to have a group with new teaching method. And for control group, you are going to eliminate this teaching method. So the people just having their like traditional method of teaching. So one more time, in this experiment, we have two groups of students that they have the same material using different teaching methods. One group received new teaching method, which is going to be our experimental group, and another one, they are experiencing traditional teaching method, which means they do not have the independent variable as we have in our experimental group. So that would be our control group. And now let's test your understanding. In this scenario, a researcher is studying how caffeine intake changes a person's resting heart rate. In her experiment, caffeine intake is the independent variable, right? Because the caffeine intake is going to be tested. It is the cause. While each subject's resting heart rate is going to be measured. It is the effect, and it is going to be our dependent variable. And guess what's going to be her control group? Okay, I'm giving you about 20 seconds time to figure out what's going to be their control group. You guys might be right, because we just need to eliminate the caffeine intake or our independent variable. And instead of giving them caffeine, we can give them water. So it means the control group is the participant with water instead of caffeine. And that would be the control group for this experiment. Thank you for watching. If you have any question, feel free to send me an email, and have a good day.